I'm coming at you live on tape from Sydney, Ohio. And today we're talking about recently retired wrestler Chuck Taylor, not to be confused with the basketball player Chuck Taylor or the shoes Chuck Taylor or anyone else named Chuck Taylor. We're talking about the wrestler Chuck Taylor, who is part of Best Friends, who recently retired, but maybe back someday because you never know about wrestling. I mean, how many times did Terry Funk retire? How many times did Ric Flair retire? And Shawn Michaels was only retired once, but he's an oddity in wrestling, or somebody who only retires once. Chuck Taylor, real name Dustin Lee Howard, is from Kentucky. Actually from Kentucky. And he started wrestling at the age of, I believe it was 15. Now in Kentucky, they will not give you a wrestling license until you're 18. So he wrestled in nearby states, Tennessee and Illinois and stuff like that, which is where he met his longtime rival Ricochet. I don't know what age Ricochet started wrestling. I didn't do research on that. At 8, he got his name Chuck Taylor due to the shoes he wore while training, which were Chuck Taylors. And a lot of wrestlers wore Chuck Taylors, but he always wore Chuck Taylor, so he got his nickname Chuck Taylor. At 18, he went to when Chuck Taylor started wrestling finally. Soon after, he went to the wrestling promotion Chikara, where he was a face and competed in the Young Lions Cup 4, but lost. And then joined the team of Fist, which was part of the Kings of Wrestling. And they challenged for the Trios title, or they challenged in a Trios tag title tournament, but lost. And Chuck Taylor then competed in the Young Lions Cup Tournament 5, which he won. I got the burps. They then competed in, because this was a trio, and Kings of Wrestling was like bigger than that. But anyways, they then competed in the trios again, the trios tag title tournament again, and this time won, but got involved in a feud with the Ant Colony, which Orange Cassidy was a part of. He was, I believe, Fire Ant. But don't quote me on that. Now, I'm trying to remember everything they did. This feud later ended in a hair versus mask match with him and I believe his partner name was Akuma losing and getting shaved bald. Later on, Johnny Gargano joined the group and they kicked out, I believe it was again Akuma, and they competed in the trios tournament again losing. But they won it was a tag title, which name I'm not even going to try to pronounce because I know I'm just going to butcher it. It starts with a C and it sounds very Mexican. But they won it, and then they lost it, and then they won it back, and then they lost it to the Young Bucks, who are the greatest sibling tag team in history. And one of the greatest tag teams in history, and the greatest sibling tag team in history. Ugh. And then he went after the World Tag Team title, or the World title, which was held by Kuma and lost. But then he got in a feud with the holder of the name Chuck Taylor, Stokely Hathaway, who was going by Chuck Taylor at the time, and had to change his name to Dustin, his real name, after going through several other names that I can't remember them all. There was about a dozen he went through, including, I think one of them's name was Scoot Tatum, which I'm like, Scoot Tatum, are you joking? So eventually he settled on Dustin. He also wrestled at Evolve's first show and was their breakout star in 2010, breakout star and MVP in 2010. So if I remember right, he didn't hold any titles in that wrestling league. Though I believe it was in Evolve that he formed the Best Friends. No, that was in Dragon Gate. I'm getting ahead of myself. He then went to Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. He also wrestled in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, where he had a feud with El Generico over El Generico wanting to start an orphanage. And apparently he hates orphans. Which, who doesn't hate orphans? They're always begging for money or pickpocketing you. And he teamed up with Kenny Omega, another orphan hater, against El Generico and Tornado. And then later teamed with Tornado and teamed with El Generico, and would then go on to hold the Pro Wrestling Guerrilla Top Championship twice. He also wrestled in Dragon Gate USA, where, as I said, where he first formed the stable Ronin, which challenged for the Open the United Gate Championship. I don't think I got that right. It's a tag team championship that something is Open the Gate Championship. There was a lot here, and I don't memorize it all real well. I kind of slept through all day yesterday and didn't have a chance to memorize anything. But his two partners in Ronin challenged for that and failed. And he challenged for Open the Freedom Gate Championship and failed. But he stole the title and gave it to his partner, Johnny Gargano, who, after Johnny Gargano lost the Tag Team Championship, he turned down Gargano and challenged Gargano again for the Open the Freedom Gate Championship and lost. And then he formed Best Friends with Trent Beretta, who was going by Trent ? And Joey Ryan. And they challenged for tag titles, but lost to the Young Bucks because Young Bucks were everywhere in the 2000s. Once again, one of the greatest tag teams ever in history. And then him and Trent went to New Japan. They were in a tag team title tournament. It was a round robin tournament, so it was points. They had 4 wins, 3 losses, so they didn't advance. They then challenged, I think, for a tag team title, which they lost, I think, to the Young Bucks again. Actually, I don't think it was to the Young Bucks. I think it was to like a couple of Japan people whose names I will just butcher if I say. He then went to TNA, but didn't do anything in TNA. Just lost a couple of matches. At this point, he was competing under the name Chucky T. He was in ROH with Trent, and they challenged the Young Bucks for the tag titles a couple times, before finally debuting in AEW with Trent, who was going under just Trent at this time, and he went back under the name Chuck Taylor. And they added Orange Cassidy, his former rival, to the Best Friends, where they competed at the first pay-per-view for a bye at the tag titles in the tag title tournament. And then the second pay-per-view, they competed against, I want to say Dark Order, but I don't think they're Dark Order yet. But they might have been. I'm not sure. But they competed against them. They beat them for the bye, and then they lost in the first round in the tournament to SoCal Uncensored, who later went on to win the tag titles. They then competed against, they then won a match for the number one contendership, Kenny Omega and Hangman Page's tag titles, which they lost to Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. They then got in a feud with Kip Sabian and Miro after Trent accidentally destroyed Kip Sabian and Miro's new arcade machine, which Trent then got injured. Chuck then faced Miro in a match, with the stipulation being if Chuck lost, he became Miro's servant for a month. And he lost, and he started dressing in a tux, and Miro referred to him as Charles. But then him and Orange Cassidy disrupted Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford's wedding. And this led to a match between the Arcade Anarchy, famous Arcade Anarchy match, which was where Trent returned and Chris Statlander helped them win. They had a match, Trent and Chuck had a match against Santino and Ortiz in a parking lot brawl. I'm trying to remember all the TNA stuff, all the AEW stuff. They feuded with the BCC because Wheeler Yuta joined them for a time when Trent was again injured. And then he joined the BCC, so the feud with the Blackpool Combat Club. In another parking lot brawl, which Blackpool Combat Club won by just beating the ever-loving shit out of them. I watched that match. It was brutal and bloody. And then Chuck got injured with his ankle injury that's causing him to retire. And Trent and Orange Cassidy went to the tag team tournament to crown a new tag team champion after Sting and Darby Allin. After Sting retired, it's him and Darby Allin held the title. And after Trent and Orange Cassidy lost, Trent turned on Orange Cassidy with Chuck at ringside. So Trent and Chuck competed in some kind of no disqualification match. I can't remember what it's called. And after that, Chuck retired because he fears he'll have a big long medical word in his ankle, which essentially means that he'll have bone tissue death in his ankle. I didn't know bone tissue could die. But then again, I've only watched medical shows, and I'm not a doctor on TV, and so I don't know about medicine. I mean, I've got a copy of Grey's Anatomy, but that's just tells you about the body. I'm not a doctor, so I have watched a lot of medical shows. So long, Chuck. We wish you the best. Apparently, he's staying on with AEW and working as a producer backstage. I mean, though, he could always come back. They could put a plate in his ankle and some screws, and he could come back as Screwy Ankle Chuck Taylor. That could be his finisher. He bashes people with his metal ankle. Next week, I don't know what the show's about. I kind of threw this together at the last minute, if you can't tell.